Um, so my topic is spiritually dead to spiritual life. It's another big topic, um, but I sort of put my experiences and emotions that I experienced over the past couple of years. Um, so it's more meaningful. So like even today, I think we all greet each other. How are you and how have you been and all that. Um, and we greet each other like this every day. Um, and I heard people greet this morning like that. But what do we normally? How do we normally answer when we are greeted? Is it just a habitual thing we just do, or do we really mean something really deep? Um, so when we ask these questions, um, like how are we doing, um, we tend to like um, be more concerned, I think, with our physical well-being, and not as much as even our mental state or even our hardly any time. I don't think spiritual well-being condition. Um, so we automatically answer, I'm fine, or you know. So we mostly relate to our physical health, but very little to do with our spiritual health. I don't hear it. It doesn't mean, we answer, for example, I'm fine, or I had the flu, or even I went to hospital and had an operation and all that, and I'm stressed with, I had a fight with my wife or something, or, my boss at work is giving me a hard time, right? So it's all to do with external things. But, but we when do we ask, how is your spiritual health? Um, we don't directly ask that. It doesn't mean it's not included when you say, how are you? It doesn't mean that. But it's not explicitly asked. So our habit is just to answer our physical, external well-being. Um, so we don't we never answer like, I'm spiritually malnourished, right? You know, it's like you haven't had food for a week, right? So you haven't read the Bible for a week. We never say, oh, I'm spiritually starving to death. I've been spiritually dead since last week. You know, I've been neglecting God recently. We don't answer like that. We may feel it, but we don't communicate with people like that. So, you know, so the question is, why is this so? Why does this happen? What is the reason? Is this because we don't care? Um, we don't care about our spiritual health. We do. We don't just care about our bodies, right? So that's not the case. Now, um, I think it's because it's just a habit that we have, right? We've been doing that for forever since we were born, right? Um, that it's become just part of the social normal way of behaving, part of the actual all society, but largely it's a secular society, right? And we don't necessarily see anything wrong with that, right? Unusual or anything, because everybody does that, almost everybody. So we don't see nothing wrong with it. Okay, what's wrong with that? So maybe then we should be more like proactive, consciously, right? Asking that also, particularly Christians should ask that more often than we do. It's not we don't care. It's just that we are in this, mode without thinking. It's an automatic reaction we have, response, right? Um, so we just have to be more consciously aware what we're doing, not just repeat whatever the standard rote um, greeting that we all do. Then when are we then spiritually dead, or even spiritually asleep? We're not totally dead sometimes, but we're like asleep. According to the Bible, it literally means separated from God, and therefore we are living in sin. We're slaves to sin, right? And as it says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 18, we're separate from the life of God. Um, so in my case, when I was young, I was an atheist, and I know how I felt. But I didn't know I was spiritually dead. This is the problem. I'm not even aware, right? Why is that? Because I don't believe in God. He doesn't exist. So this question doesn't even come up, let alone come up. Not aware. It's like doesn't know it's there. They're living in sin. So I do whatever I want, right? I don't, acknowledge the existence of God at all. He doesn't exist. I was a Buddhist. Even then, God doesn't exist. There's no God. It doesn't mean they're bad people. Um, it doesn't mean that, but they can't relate to the spiritually dead meaning. And they cannot relate to living in sin. They can't relate. They don't understand. You ask them, what are you talking about, right? So I even did a total rejection of God. Like not just don't believe in God, but reject, right? Reject like this. And even despised or even hating, right? What good does he do? He doesn't even. Why do I have all these problems in my life? Why are there all these problems in the world if he's so good? That's the main argument of atheists have. Now I know it's narrow, right? Looking at things very narrowly. It's what God does is beyond their human understanding, right? It's um, we cannot fathom, what he can do, what he does, what his plan is. It's like the vast universe. Can you imagine the end of the universe, where it ends? We can't fathom that. It's just so big that you can't fathom it, right? And it's still increasing. It says expanding. Our mind cannot calculate it. So it's like at school you have a calculator. In the old days, you calculate a number big enough, it says error, E. Um, so that's like our mind, our brain can't compute that, what God is. We can't do it. So that's how limited we are humans. So I asked if God exists, if they did, and if he's so great, um, why can't he make all my problems go away? Right? That's from the human point of view. You see, human level. That's all we can understand. And why can't He give me things we want instantly, right? We're impatient. We want it now. But we all know, like, God is not a magician. Right? He's not a magic. The magic lamp. What's that? Story where the genie, whatever, wipes the lamp and boom, right? He's not a magic lamp. He's not a vending machine. You don't go to the vending machine, select what I want. He's not that. He's much greater than that, right? So being spiritually dead is, simply living without God, right? God is missing from your life. It's just that. It's hard to comprehend for the atheist, because he's looking at a human level. He can't comprehend, right? So what did I think? Like, I thought that I didn't need God, even if He existed, right? This is the harsh reality. They're lost, right? That's simply lost. So I'm thinking, what do I need God for? Why do I need Him? I don't need Him. When I have a big house or a big car, everything I want, big TV, all the comforts of this world, right? Good income and good family. What do I need God for? But how mistaken these people are. How mistaken I was. People need God more than anything else, and it's on top of the list. He's number one, right? So, and then I think I expressed this to other people before. I thought that everything I did well, and what I accomplished in life was because I was smart. I thought I had the ability. I did all the hard work. All the credit goes to me, right? It's all my credit. it's, it's because me. I did all the. No credit was given to. Well, I thank my parents, but never thank God. Not once when I was an atheist. Because there's no God. Who you gonna give thanks to? Give thanks to nothing when I don't believe in it. But I didn't realize that. I was. We all are blessed with whatever skills we have, knowledge we have, abilities we have, um, skills we have, all that. We're blessed. We're not fully aware of it, but if He doesn't give us that, we don't have it. And these are all blessings from God, right? And I wasn't thankful to God for all these blessings, right? And then the worst thing was, I said to myself, I'm not a sinner. No way. I don't do any bad things. We do, but we don't admit it. But the big things, I don't kill people or I don't rob a bank, right? So I'm not a sinner. No way, right? What have I done so bad that I'm a sinner? I feel offended, right? You call me a sinner. A Christian calls me a sinner when I'm an atheist. I'm offended. How dare you call me a sinner? But they're wrong. They're wrong in that too, because we all humans, every one of us, are sinful by nature. Right? So before we receive Christ, who died on the cross for our sins, we continue to live in sin by nature, not because we choose. We don't go, I'll live in sin and I won't. No, it's not a choice. No, it's not a choice you make. You're just automatically living in sin without even knowing, without even realizing it. You see, this is a sad part about it. That's what I went from 360 degrees, from an atheist to, and looking back, I was blind. I was blind back then. I had my eyes open. I might as well have been blind, right? Um, so as it says in Romans, 3, chapter 3, verse 23, we all know this, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All. He didn't say some, he didn't say most, he didn't say 99%, all. Right? And this is a revelation to someone like me. When you read this, you go, wow, it's an eye opener, right? It's a big eye opener. It's like a lightning bolt hitting you, you know. You go, where have I been? I've been asleep. I've been in a comatose all this time. You really see, the way things are, the way God meant for you to see, not on just human terms. Like another verse, for the wages of sin is death. It's spiritual death, not physical death, but it's spiritual death. Wages all sin, not just selectively, all. So effectively, if you're disconnected from God, if you don't get the gift of God, is eternal life through Jesus Christ, you don't get life. You can't get spiritual life. You can't get it. You can't buy it. You can't, just willingly say, give me your spirit. Right? It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't get installed when you just ask for it, right? You can't buy it at a shop. You can't download it. And it doesn't happen when you choose. You can't choose. Even if you say, I believe in God, right? It doesn't happen today. It might not happen for many years. Right? So during this time, what we're drawn to is I was reading like all these books written by atheists. I was drawn to that, right? Famous people like Bertrand Russell, if you ever heard of him. He's a philosopher and mathematician and all that. Richard Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist, a zoologist. They're interesting, but there's more to it than all this, And Philip Adams, he's on ABC Radio. They're well-known people. Now, during all that time, God and all that, the Word of God is, our spiritual nourishment. And I wasn't getting any. We are not getting, at the time I'm getting zero. So I was spiritually dead. Like if we didn't breathe, it didn't eat, it didn't drink water, we'd be dead very soon. The same thing. But we neglect our spiritual side big time. And because it can't be seen, physically you look good, but spiritually, you're rotting, you're rotten, you're dead. Just like that, story where, the apple, what's that story? I always forget if it's Snow White or, I think it's Snow White, where the witch, the bad, good, eat this apple, it's shiny. She eats it, right? Poison. So it looks good outside, but internally you don't know. This is with many people. They themselves don't know it. I didn't know it. Not aware. It's not that obvious, right? So even as Christians, if we're not on guard, if you're not diligent, if you get complacent, and we get lazy, we get to switch off, turning off the TV, we switch off, and we become, whatever, momentarily even, we don't get to put God first and all that, and we're spiritually dead. We might wake up again, but we're dead for a moment, right? And if we just become nominal Christian, like just Sunday Christian, when we walk out this door, we just switch off, right? Not intentionally, not deliberately, but habitually. It becomes a habit to turn off. We all do it. once in a while. Just a human, it's a human folly, right? It's a human weakness. We all do it. So it's just a very proactive, conscious effort we have to make all the time. That this human condition, of being spiritually dead, it's been around all human history, I guess, and it's quite well, quite well shown, illustrating even the literature we read, like poems. Like these two poems I studied in HSC, this is like 40 years ago, by Robert Browning. It illustrates really like this poem by Soliloquy of a Spanish Cloister. It's about they're in a monastery, right? They're monks, and this Spanish monk hates his fellow monk, who's called Brother Lawrence. He hates him for whatever reason, and he's jealous of him, and he has a good garden, he works hard. He goes and cuts them all. A monk is doing this. He's the fellow monk, right? And this practice, he says, whenever he drinks something, right, orange juice or something, he thinks this symbolizes he's observing the Holy Trinity, because he's drinking in three gulps rather than one, all at once. So just because of this ritual act, this person thinks that he's holier than Brother Lawrence. He just has it in one. Isn't it narrow-minded, right? So obviously this monk is spiritually dead because all his actions are contrary to, what the Bible teaches, right? What Jesus teaches. He doesn't, love, as the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. He doesn't love him this way. It's the opposite, right? And another poem, the bishop orders his two men, this church, St. Praxis Church. It's a fictional church. It's about a dying bishop in Renaissance Italy. He's dictating to his nephews and sons to have his tomb, designed in a beautiful way, right, with all these precious stones stuck on it and all that, right? So he's showing this with earthly things. He's having this vanity for earthly material things over his spiritual, right? He's not worried about that. He's not worried about whether he's going to go to hell or heaven. And he wants his resting place, within the hearing distance of the choir, the best place. His tomb placed there, right? And where the sun will shine through the windows, and whether he'll have a beautiful view. He thinks he's going to stay in the tomb eternally. No, he's going up there, So, he's mistaken as well. So he's more concerned about the desires of the world and not the spiritual heavenly, right, matters. So it says in Colossians 3:2, I think this was in our newsletter, in our old newsletter, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. Right, so we know what spiritual dead means, roughly what it means. So oppositely, when are you like spiritual life? Begin to be spiritual life now. Simply when you have God in your life, that's the beginning. But it's not automatic. It's not like automatic switch, and instantly you'll have spiritual life. But you begin to wake up, and it's a growing thing, developmental thing. And in your mind, in our way of living and all that, we consciously we put, God in the driver's seat. Before, he was in the back seat. He was in the passenger seat. We were the driver. I'm driving God around. I'm going where I want. Right? But now God is in front. He's guiding us, right? Um, and in our mind, uh, he's becomes number one in your life, not number two or number three, right? So there's a term on the internet, joy. Jesus, then others, and then yourself. Right? Somebody came up with that. So when all this happens, you sort of realize, it comes to realization that you learn how much God loves you and all that, because his only son died on the cross, right, for us. And then you become, as I said before, like you become more thankful for all the blessings you have. And you try to be more like him, because that's our aim. And then we are aware that because he died for our sins, we're no longer slave to sin. And so how do we know then we're no longer slaves to sin? How do we know? It's when you can, one of the ways, I guess major ways, is when you can detect and differentiate between what is good and evil, what is right and wrong, what is sinful and not sinful. Because the human world out there mixes this up. They confuse what is, they say what is bad is good and good is bad, right? That's what it has become. So, like in Hebrews, it says, chapter 5:14, to distinguish good from evil, we have to be able to do that. Now, just because we're no longer slaves to sin, does not mean we're immune to it. Not totally immune, but we are more immune to it than not, right? It's like, we are more aware of it. We're sensitive to it. We're sensitive, right? We know that's wrong or whatever. So we are aware. When it shows up, that's wrong. That's sin, right? But we are still tempted by that, right? We're all tempted every day. So, but we are more guarded against it, and we are now free to choose. There's choice one, choice two, good or bad, we choose. God did not make us into robots, programmed, right? Always do it like, no, he gave us free will to choose, right? To choose the right way. And then to an atheist, that seems weird. When I was an atheist, I go, why does he make us choose? But that's the awakening part, right? That's the enlightenment part, right? So this is like having a security alarm on your house or your car, right? If you have no alarm, the thief comes, they steal everything, right? But if the alarm goes off, the thief runs off, right? So having God here does that, right? It arms us, right? We're armed. It's like the verse where we are, we put the armor of God, right? We're armed, we're protected, right? So that's the whole point of it, And if you're an atheist, not aware you're not armed, they're not even aware you got an alarm or not. You see how weird that is? Not even being aware. No idea. I don't know. I know. I've been there, right? So when you see something evil, if you're spiritual life, if you're, then if you something bad, alarm goes inside your head. Big alarm, right? You're armed with an alarm, right? It tells you, right? A warning. It warns you. But if you're spiritual dead, you have an alarm that goes off. So you're at risk of all things, all bad things, and you don't even know it. You're like affected by that. You think it's good. You literally think it's good. So, for example, I've got an example for you. Now, this we all know this the artwork by Michelangelo, right? It symbolizes creation of Adam. It's in the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, right? Now, I'll tell you a story where a, I won't name names, but a person saw this. They said, "Take it down. It's nude. It's nudity. Someone's naked." You see how spiritual that they are? This is about God we're talking about. Babies are born naked. Is that offensive? You've seen, what parents saw when they're born, babies are born, they're born naked, right? It's normal thing to normal. It's a beautiful thing, right? But if they're not have God in me, they think that's offensive, right? See how wrong that is? It's no other. It's not. It's not some unknown art here. It's about creation of humanity, basically, right? And they're naked, right? Or do you find this is personal for me? This drag queen story time at the library. This is my opinion. Is that offensive, or that Michelangelo thing offensive? To me, this is offensive. Look. Is that normal to you? Does that look good to you? They're corrupting the minds of little children. Little children, corrupting them, right? So that's just one of the tests. So if there are people that can have their opinion, they think this drag queen is good, but I tell them that's wrong. You don't know it's wrong, but it is. It's not me saying it, right? It's not really me saying it, really. Alarm goes off when I see this, right? And then the next thing you do is, as we started, we studied this book, remember, The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. We begin to seek God's presence, constant presence in our life. That's what we do more and more. It becomes a habit. Brother Lawrence said whether he was a cook, he was a cook, so he was in the monastery, and he worked in the kitchen. But whether he was in the kitchen or in the chapel or in the walking down the street, he's wherever he was, he sought God's presence, right? By talking to him, praying to him, being thankful to him, all this stuff, right? So this is what a person. I'm not saying I'm the best at this. I'm just saying that this is what I started doing. I'm still a learner, right? I'm an else, like a driver, L. I'm still learning to drive. But we begin to do that, right? And so there is Brother Lawrence. So when God is number one in your life, and you're seeking His constant presence in your life, it's a natural progression that you start praying more. It's just cause and effect. It's just natural progression. And so, but praying doesn't mean we just do these empty, meaningless prayers. Like I'll pray that I want a Ferrari, or you know, I'll pray that my rugby team wins this Friday, or meaningless stuff like that. People pray like that, but we're not talking about that kind of praying. We're praying for, like, pray for His mercy and forgiveness, and for His amazing love and all that, blessings. And we do that. Why? Why we do that? It's not just just a empty thing. It's because we need that when we all go through difficult times, right? And when we are weary. Now, we're sort of prepared for it, right? When difficult times come, we are ready for it. Mentally ready, spiritually ready. We can handle it. But people that don't have God, I think they're more at risk of not handling it well. A lot of people do, but many may not. In my opinion, they are less able, because we lean on God, but they have no one to lean to. I felt that when I know God, who do I lean on? You got friends and all that, family, but you need more than that. There's a human limitation for what they can do, because that friend you're leaning on, he's going through a difficult time. He's going through a difficult time, and he doesn't have time for you. Correct? He may be even going through a more difficult time. So, but God, He's open 24 hours. He's available 24 hours. He's never going to knock you back, right? He's not going to say, I'm busy, come back tomorrow. He's not going to do that. And it says in the Bible that he never slumbers, right? He doesn't go to sleep. He never slumbers. That means He doesn't get tired either. I don't think He ever gets tired, right? So you start praying, wherever and whenever, in the car while you're driving. Praying doesn't mean we do this motion of praying, we don't have to do that. It's in here. So in the car driving, on the train, in the bathroom, during lunchtime, while you're shopping, in the morning, in the afternoon, any time of the day or night, you can do it. This is a wonderful thing, If you went to a psychologist, you got to make a booking. He's not available. You got to see him like a month later. No, he's available right now. Right. So, even I pray to God to give me the encouragement and the confidence as well. I was not confident before, to do this kind of thing. I never would have done this before, right? But I am. So, as I said before, when you have God in your life, your eyes open up, right? And you begin to see also the beauty and wonder of all God's creations. You begin to see it. You don't choose to see it. You go, I want to see the beauty. You're not doing that. You're not saying happen now. It just happens. So this happened to me. I was having lunch once one day, and I looked at, I had my eyes open, so I was looking. I was just looking at the sky. It was a clear day, not rainy, not cloudy. So I'm looking at the clear blue sky. I'm looking at the birds and the trees and the people. And then suddenly realized everything looked beautiful. I go, why didn't I see this before? You know, everything was in harmony. I could hear all the birds, singing, um, all that, and the sun coming out, all that. I go, what? It was yeah, I experienced that. So yeah, as already, I was blind to the beauty of God's creation, right? And so, like in that song, Amazing Grace, we all know that song. I don't know what it says in English, but it says, I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. Apparently, I imagine John Newton experienced that kind of thing. It didn't just come out of nowhere, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. He had to have experienced something that happened to him. A similar thing, or maybe different thing, but some kind of experience like that, where his eyes opened, right? And he felt before he was lost. Mind you, he was a slave trader. He sold slaves. And then later on, he was an abolitionist. He worked to abolish slavery. So in that, it's a 360-degree point too, change, right? Right? So he now sees when he was blind. Now he sees. So it says in the Bible, like, even though we see, NIV says a bit differently, but we don't perceive. Seeing and perceiving is different, because seeing we see. You can see this, but you don't perceive. You don't see the insight to it. You don't see the deep meaning to it. And you may I hear something, but I don't know what it is. But we hear and we understand what it is. We understand the deeper meaning, from God's point of view. And when God does come into your life, it's like it's just like finding the the treasure, greatest treasure that there is, right? And it's not just it's glowing. I picture it glowing, right? Like when you see movies and things, Treasure Island and like, have you seen Treasure Island? When they open the treasure trove, all the jewels are sparkling, right? So that's what we have in here. It's glowing and sparkling. Um, with His love and all that blessing, right? And shining like the brightest star in the sky. And on top of that, when you feel this, I think your heart will beat. Your heart beats, obviously we are alive, but it's beating. It starts to beat strongly, uh, with with the joy, of knowing God, right? uh, yeah, that's what you feel. I think start to feel more and more. Yep. And actually, I wrote this part today because someone came to me and I wrote it. So everybody has this treasure inside them. Everybody has it. I believe everybody has it. It is just a matter of discovering it, right? It's like the gold, gold under the ground. There's gold there. We can't see it. It's like 10 meters below or whatever. We can't see it. We've got to dig it, right? Dig the ground. And then we find it, right? So you have to dig and it may take time, but you'll find it. And then I think you met Sam. He passed away last year, 1 year ago. And he bought me this, I brought it today. He bought me this Bible. It's a King James one, but he bought me one, his Korean English Bible. One day he gave it to me, right? And I literally jumped with joy. I didn't choose, but I jumped with joy, and I told him this. It was, I think I felt more joy than winning the lotto, right? I think I sort of gave him a big hug and all this. I reacted really big time. So like it says in Psalms chapter 105, verse 3, let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. So when we seek him, we find joy. We that's what we get back in return. But the reality is there are many distractions and temptations and that can cause us to be spiritually dead. So it is important for us not to lose focus on God and be alert, be alert and stay awake, and to stay spiritual life. We can't afford to go to sleep, otherwise we'll be overtaken, by the bad forces. That's that's all I have. Thank you for listening.